Please, don't let them hurt my mom." On a freezing midnight street in Chicago, a 7-year-old girl clutches a worn-out teddy bear standing in front of her mother, as if that is the only way she knows how to protect her. In front of them stands a powerful man, tall, cold, his expensive black coat completely out of place beside the thin clothes of the two figures shivering in the wind. He isn't a police officer, and he isn't an ordinary passerby. He is the man the entire city whispers about in fear, Mafia boss Vinny Russo. The moment the little girl looks up and says those words, the man who has witnessed betrayal, violence, and blood his entire life suddenly freezes, not because he is afraid, but because the little girl's eyes feel strangely familiar. Just minutes later, he makes a decision that leaves everyone watching from the shadows completely stunned. But what no one expected was this. Why would the most feared mafia boss in the city suddenly kneel in front of a homeless little girl, as if he has just realized a shocking truth? If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the quiet power of kindness, especially when no one else chooses to show it. Share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from. Which city and country are you in, and what time is it there right now? It's always amazing to see how stories like this connect people from all over the world. If moments like this remind you of the beauty of humanity, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more powerful stories that celebrate compassion, courage, and the simple acts of kindness that can change a life. In the shadowed streets of Chicago's South Side, October 2025, arrived with a biting wind that carried the scent of diesel and damp concrete. The city pulsed under a low gray sky, its skyscrapers distant and indifferent, while down here the world felt smaller, meaner, more unforgiving. Elena Thompson huddled in the doorway of an abandoned brick tenement on West 59th Street, her thin coat pulled tight around shoulders that had grown too sharp from months of hunger. 32 years old, but the lines on her face belonged to someone much older, someone who had learned too soon that hope was a luxury she could not afford. She had come to this spot because the shelter on 63rd had turned her away again. Beds were full priority given to families with younger children or documented emergencies. Elena had neither. Her daughter Mia, 7 years old, pressed against her side small body, trembling not just from the cold but from the fear that had become as familiar as breathing. Mia's dark hair hung limp, unwashed for days, and her eyes, large, watchful, darted toward every passing shadow. The girl clutched a frayed, stuffed bear, its one remaining button eye dangling by a thread, the only toy that had survived the last eviction. Elena whispered to her daughter, voice soft and cracked, "It's okay, baby. Mama's got you. We'll find somewhere warm soon." The words felt hollow even to her own ears. She had said them too many times in the back of a friend's borrowed car during winter nights, when the heat didn't work in the corner of a laundromat after closing, when the manager let them stay until the lights flicked off on park benches when the police moved them along at dawn. Each time the promise grew thinner like the soles of her worn sneakers. The landlord had changed the locks 3 weeks earlier without notice. Elena's last paycheck from the diner had gone to a predatory loan that promised quick cash but delivered only deeper debt. She had begged, cried, offered to clean the entire building for free, anything, but the man had laughed, said single mothers with no family were high risk. Now they had nothing, no home, no savings, no safety net. The food bank line had stretched for blocks yesterday, and by the time Elena reached the front, the shelves were bare. Mia had eaten half a granola bar that morning, the last of their food. Elena had pretended she wasn't hungry. Across the city, in a quiet, tree-lined suburb north of the Loop, Vincent Vinny Russo sat in the study of his sprawling stone and timber home. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured lawns that glowed faintly under security lights. The room smelled of aged leather and polished oak, the kind of quiet wealth that whispered rather than shouted. Vinny, fair-skinned with the broad shoulders of a man who had once relied on strength as much as strategy, stared at the bank of monitors on his desk. Each screen showed a different angle of the property: driveway, gates, backyard, hallways. He trusted no one completely, not even the men who had worked for him for decades. At 48, Vinny ran a legitimate empire of waste management companies that spanned 3 states' contracts with municipalities that paid handsomely and asked few questions. Behind that facade lay the older world he had inherited, family business loyalties sealed in blood rival factions always circling. He had lost his wife Laura 8 years earlier to a sudden illness that no amount of money could stop. She had been 39, vibrant, the only person who ever made him feel the weight of his choices. After her death, Vinny had hardened into something colder, more efficient. Grief had not softened him. It had sharpened him into a blade. Tonight the monitors showed nothing unusual, yet his chest felt tight with the old familiar ache. He rubbed the scar along his left forearm, a reminder of a deal gone wrong 15 years ago, and thought of the child Laura had wanted but never had. The emptiness had never left him. It sat like a stone in his ribs, growing heavier with each passing year. Back on the south side, the wind picked up, rattling a loose chain-link fence nearby. Elena shifted, trying to shield Mia from the gusts. A group of young men passed on the sidewalk, laughing too loud, bottles clinking. One glanced their way, smirked, said something low to his friends. Elena pulled Mia closer, heart hammering. She had learned to make herself small, invisible, but invisibility only worked until it didn't. Then headlights cut through the dark. A black SUV slowed at the corner, engine idling. The driver's window lowered. Vinny Russo leaned out slightly, face half in shadow. He had been driving back from a late meeting when something instinct perhaps made him turn down this block instead of the expressway. He saw the woman and child huddled in the doorway, saw the way the little girl clung to her mother like a lifeline slipping away. Vinny's jaw tightened. He knew poverty. He had grown up in it before clawing his way out. But this was different, raw, exposed, the kind that stripped dignity bare. He felt a pang he hadn't allowed himself in years, guilt sharp and unwelcome. Laura would have stopped. Laura would have helped. He cut the engine and stepped out, tall, broad, dressed in a dark overcoat that cost more than Elena had seen in a year. His voice carried low, calm authority. "You two okay?" Elena tensed, every muscle screaming danger. Men like this didn't stop in places like this, unless they wanted something. She kept her eyes down, voice barely above a whisper. "We're fine, sir. Just waiting for the bus." "No bus comes this late," he said. "And it's getting colder." Mia peeked up, curious despite fear. Vinny met her gaze and something cracked inside him, a small, almost imperceptible fracture. The girl's eyes were wide, trusting in a way that hurt to see. He thought of the child he and Laura had dreamed of, the one who never came. Elena felt dizziness wash over her, exhaustion, hunger, terror mixing into a numb fog. "Please," she murmured, more to herself than him. "We don't want trouble." Vinny glanced down the street. 2 men from a rival crew had appeared at the far end, watching, waiting. He recognized their postures. They had been tailing him for days, testing boundaries. If they saw weakness, they would exploit it. But right now, the only weakness he felt was the pull toward these 2 fragile figures in the doorway. He made a decision in the space of a heartbeat. "Get in the car. Both of you. It's warm and I know a place that's safe." Elena's heart lurched. Every instinct screamed, no stranger power imbalance, the 1,000 stories of women who disappeared after trusting the wrong man. But Mia shivered violently, lips blue. Elena looked at her daughter, saw the hollow cheeks, the exhaustion that no child should know. Tears stung her eyes. She nodded once, small and defeated. Vinny opened the back door. Elena lifted Mia inside first, then climbed in after, arms wrapped protectively around her daughter. The leather seats were soft, heated. The contrast hit Elena like a physical blow, warmth she hadn't felt in months, the faint scent of clean interior against the sourness of unwashed clothes and desperation. She felt humiliated, exposed as if her poverty had been laid bare under bright lights. Vinny slid behind the wheel. As he pulled away, he caught sight of the rival men in the rearview mirror. One raised a phone, probably snapping a photo. Vinny's grip tightened on the wheel. Conflict simmered beneath his calm exterior, anger at the constant threats, remorse that his world might now touch these innocents, guilt that he had let himself become the kind of man who lived behind cameras and gates. He drove north, away from the south side toward the suburbs. Elena sat rigid, pulse racing. Mia fell asleep against her shoulder almost immediately, the heat and motion too much after so many sleepless nights. Elena stared out the window at the passing lights, mind reeling. Who was this man? Why had he stopped? What did he want? Vinny glanced in the mirror. "My name's Vincent." "Vinny, you don't have to tell me yours if you don't want to." "Elena," she whispered after a long pause. "And this is Mia." He nodded. Inside, turmoil churned. He felt an overwhelming surge, not romance, but something fiercer, protectiveness, responsibility, a sudden violent need to shield them from the world he knew too well. It terrified him. He had spent years building walls to keep emotion out. Now a 7-year-old girl and her exhausted mother had slipped past every defense in minutes. The SUV merged onto the expressway. Behind them, the city lights faded. Ahead lay his home fortress and prison in one. Vinny's chest ached with the weight of what he was about to do. He had rescued them on impulse, but the real conflict was just beginning: how to protect them without dragging them into his shadows, how to be the man Laura once believed he could be. Elena held Mia tighter, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of something dangerous hope. It hurt worse than the cold. The black SUV glided north through the glittering veins of the expressway, leaving the sodium-lit despair of the south side behind, like a bad dream that refused to fade. Inside the car, silence pressed against the leather seats, thick and heavy. Elena Thompson sat rigid in the back, one arm locked around Mia, the other pressed flat against the door, as though ready to bolt at the first red light. The heat pouring from the vents felt almost obscene after so many nights spent curled against concrete walls, wind slicing through threadbare blankets. Her stomach twisted, hunger mixed with nausea, fear mixed with something she dared not name. Mia slept fitfully, cheek against Elena's shoulder, small breaths fogging the window in tiny disappearing clouds. Elena stared at the passing signs, O'Hare, Evanston, Wilmette, names that belonged to other people's lives. Her own world had shrunk to cardboard boxes under viaducts, the sour smell of unwashed bodies in overcrowded shelters, the daily arithmetic of choosing between food and bus fare. Tonight that world had cracked open without warning, and the fracture terrified her more than the cold ever had. Vinny Russo kept both hands on the wheel, eyes flicking between the road and the rearview mirror. Every few seconds he checked the trailing headlights, two sets now persistent but not yet closing distance. He recognized the pattern, Marco's crew testing him again, probing for weakness. They had been circling closer since the last territory dispute in August. Tonight they had seen him stop. Tonight they had seen the woman and child. The realization burned low in his gut, remorse so sharp it felt like broken glass under his ribs. Laura's voice echoed in memory. You don't have to carry the whole world, Vin. Just don't let it crush the people who matter. He had failed her then. He was terrified he would fail these two now. The gates to his property opened silently at the approach, ironwork parting like a curtain. The long driveway curved through mature oaks, security lights blooming in soft pools across flagstone. Elena's breath caught when the house came into view, stone facade, tall windows, glowing amber, a slate roof that caught the moonlight like dark water. It looked like something from a magazine she once flipped through in a doctor's waiting room while waiting for Mia's free clinic appointment. She felt suddenly, violently small. Vinny parked in the attached garage beside two other vehicles, a sleek sedan and a heavy-duty truck, both polished to mirror shine. He killed the engine. The quiet that followed was almost painful. Stay here a minute, he said, voice low but firm. He stepped out, scanned the perimeter out of habit, then opened the back door for them. Elena hesitated. Her legs felt numb when she finally moved, pins and needles racing up her calves from too many nights sitting on cold pavement. She lifted Mia, who stirred but did not wake, and followed Vinny through a side entrance into a mudroom lined with cubbies and hooks. The air smelled of cedar and faint citrus cleaner, clean in a way that made her aware of every stain on her coat, every tangle in her hair. He led them down a wide hallway, floored in dark hardwood. Elena's sneakers squeaked faintly. The sound felt obscene in the hush. They passed framed black and white photographs, older men in suits, a younger Vinny beside a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Elena's gaze lingered on the woman's face. Something about her expression made Elena's throat close. Vinny stopped at a guest suite on the ground floor. He pushed the door open. The room was larger than the last 3 apartments Elena had lived in combined. Cream walls, thick carpet, a king bed dressed in white linens, a sitting area with 2 armchairs facing a gas fireplace already flickering low. A door to the left revealed a bathroom tiled in marble towels folded like hotel origami. Elena stood frozen in the doorway, clutching Mia tighter. The warmth, the cleanliness, the sheer excess, it felt like a trick. Her mind raced through every warning she had ever heard, every news story about women who accepted help and vanished. Vinny read her posture. Bathroom's there. Clean towels, soap, shampoo. Closet has robes and some spare clothes, women's sizes from before. His voice roughened on the last word. Fridge in the kitchenette is stocked. Eat whatever you want. I'll be upstairs if you need anything. He turned to leave. Wait, Elena whispered. The word escaped before she could stop it. She swallowed, voice trembling. Why are you doing this? Vinny paused back to her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, because I saw your daughter's eyes, and I remembered what it felt like to be invisible. He walked away before she could respond, footsteps fading down the hall. Elena closed the door with shaking hands. She set Mia on the bed, careful, reverent, then sank to the carpet beside it, knees drawn up, forehead pressed to them. Tears came hot and fast, soaking the sleeves of her coat. She cried for the nights she had held Mia under highway overpasses, while semis thundered overhead for the mornings she had smiled through hunger, so her daughter wouldn't know for the landlord's laughter when she begged for one. More weak for the caseworker who had looked through her like she was, already gone. She cried because the room around her was beautiful and safe, and she did not trust it. She cried because part of her wanted to believe. Upstairs, Vinny stood at the window of his study, staring into the dark backyard. The monitors glowed behind him, every angle of the property quiet except for the guest suite feed. He watched Elena collapse beside the bed, shoulders heaving, and felt something inside him tear wider. Guilt clawed at him, vicious and unrelenting. He had built walls of money and power to keep pain at bay, yet pain had found him anyway in the shape of a thin woman and a sleeping child who looked at the world with too much trust. His phone buzzed. A text from one of his drivers. 2 cars followed you from 59th. Parked across the street now. Marco's boys. Vinny's jaw clenched. He typed back. Eyes on them. No contact unless they move. He set the phone down, opened a drawer, removed a small black pistol, checked the magazine out of habit. The metal felt cold against his palm. He hated that this was still his reflex. He hated more that it might become necessary again, because of one impulsive decision on a freezing street. Downstairs, Elena forced herself to stand. She peeled off Mia's coat, then her own wincing at the smell that rose sweat, exhaust despair. She ran a bath, the sound of water almost shocking after months of public restroom sinks and wet wipes. Steam rose. She undressed her daughter gently, helped her into the tub. Mia woke just enough to murmur warm, before sinking back into drowsiness. Elena washed Mia's hair with trembling fingers, working shampoo into tangles that had formed over weeks. When the water cooled, she lifted her daughter out, wrapped her in the thickest towel she had ever touched, carried her to the bed. She found soft pajamas in the closet, far too large, but clean, and dressed Mia in them, rolling the cuffs. Only then did she allow herself to look in the mirror. The woman staring back was gaunt, eyes, sunken, skin, sallow, ribs pressed against her shirt. She turned away quickly, ashamed. She showered next, scalding water pounding against skin that had forgotten gentleness. Soap smelled of lavender, real lavender, not the chemical imitation from dollar store bottles. When she stepped out, she found a robe hanging on the door, soft terry cloth, pale gray. She wrapped it around herself and felt the first sob rise again. She ate standing at the small kitchenette counter, cheese crackers and apple milk. Each bite felt stolen. She saved half for Mia when she woke. Later, she sat in one of the armchairs, staring at the fire. Mia slept deeply beside her, small hand curled near Elena's knee. Elena reached out, brushed hair from her daughter's forehead, and whispered, "I don't know what happens next, baby, but I'm right here." Upstairs, Vinny watched the feed until the camera showed Elena finally lie down beside Mia, pulling the covers over both of them. He exhaled long and ragged. The conflict inside him raged louder now, remorse for the life he had chosen, terror that his shadows would touch them, fierce protectiveness that felt almost violent in its intensity. He had spent years convincing himself he deserved isolation. Tonight, that conviction cracked. Outside, across the quiet street, two men sat in a dark sedan watching the gates. One lit a cigarette, the glow briefly illuminating his face. Vinny saw the flare on the monitor. His hand tightened around the grip of the pistol still on the desk. He did not sleep. Morning light filtered through heavy silk drapes in the guest suite, soft and golden, the kind of light that belonged to houses with histories and trust funds. Elena Thompson woke slowly, body aching from the unfamiliar softness of the mattress after so many months on thin foam pads or bare floorboards. For a heartbeat, she forgot where she was. Then memory rushed back, the black SUV, the gated driveway, the man named Vinny who had looked at Mia with something close to pain in his eyes. She sat up too quickly. The room tilted. Dizziness swept over her, familiar from too many skipped meals, and she gripped the edge of the bed until the spinning eased. Mia still slept, curled on her side, one small hand fisted in the pillowcase. The pajamas hung loose on her thin frame sleeves, rolled twice at the wrists. Elena touched her daughter's forehead, cool, no fever, and felt a sob catch in her throat. How long since Mia had slept more than 4 hours without waking to cold or hunger, or the sound of arguments through thin walls? How long since either of them had woken without fear as the first sensation Elena rose on unsteady legs? The robe from last night lay folded at the foot of the bed. She wrapped it around herself again, the fabric so plush it felt like a betrayal against her skin, which still carried the faint grit of street dust no shower could fully erase. She padded to the kitchenette, opened the small refrigerator. Eggs, yogurt, fresh berries, orange juice in a glass bottle, not the plastic jug from corner stores. She stared at the contents until her vision blurred. Taking even one item felt like theft. She settled for water, drank 2 glasses standing at the sink, then carried a yogurt and a spoon back to the bed. When Mia stirred, Elena helped her sit up, brushed hair from her face. "Morning, baby," she whispered. "Look what's here." Mia's eyes widened at the little cup of strawberries. She ate slowly at first, then faster, juice staining her chin. Elena watched, heart cracking open wider with every bite. She had spent so many mornings rationing half a granola bar between them, telling Mia it was a special treat. Now abundance sat in front of them, and the contrast hurt more than scarcity ever had. A soft knock sounded at the door. Elena froze. "It's Vinny," came the low voice from the hallway. "May I come in?" Elena glanced at Mia, who nodded shyly. Elena crossed the room on bare feet, opened the door a careful crack. Vinny stood there in a dark sweater and jeans, holding a tray with coffee toast, scrambled eggs, and a small vase with a single white rose. The domesticity of it clashed so violently with everything Elena knew about men like him that she felt a wave of disorientation sweep through her again. "I thought you might be hungry," he said simply. Elena stepped back to let him in. He set the tray on the low table by the armchairs, careful not to intrude further. Mia watched him with wide eyes, clutching the yogurt cup like a shield. Vinny crouched to Mia's level, keeping distance. "Hey, kiddo." "Sleep okay," Mia nodded, then after a long pause whispered, "Thank you for the warm bed." Vinny's throat worked. He looked away for a second, then back. "You're welcome." Elena watched the exchange, suspicion warring with something softer, more dangerous. She had learned long ago that kindness usually came with strings. Yet here was this man, wealthy, powerful, dangerous in ways she could only guess, bringing breakfast like it was ordinary. Vinny straightened. "There's a closet down the hall with clothes that might fit. Some sweaters, jeans, coats. Take what you need. I'll be in my study if you want anything else." He paused at the door. "You're safe here, Elena. Both of you." He left before she could answer. Elena sank into the armchair, hands trembling. The rose on the tray trembled too, petals perfect and white. She reached out, touched one fingertip to it, then pulled back as though burned. Safety. The word felt foreign, obscene. She had not felt safe since before Mia's father disappeared, before the landlord changed the locks, before the nights under bridges when wind howled like something alive and angry. Mia finished the yogurt, licked the spoon clean, then looked at her mother. "He's nice, Mama." Elena forced a smile. "We don't know him yet, baby. We have to be careful." But even as she said it, something inside her shifted small, almost imperceptible. A crack in the armor she had worn for years. Upstairs, Vinny stood at the bank of monitors, coffee untouched beside him. The feed from the guest suite showed Elena helping Mia choose clothes from the closet he had mentioned. Simple things: soft gray hoodie, dark jeans, thick socks. He watched Elena fold Mia's old clothes carefully, as though they were treasures instead of rags stiff with grime. The sight tore at him. He had not expected this. Not the way Mia's quiet thank you had lodged in his chest like shrapnel. Not the way Elena's guarded eyes, exhausted, wary, yet flickering with cautious curiosity, made him feel exposed in his own home. He had spent 8 years since Laura's death convincing himself he deserved solitude. Now, 2 strangers had walked in and upended that conviction in less than 12 hours. His phone vibrated. A message from his driver. Same 2 cars from last night. Still parked across the street. One got out, took photos of the gate. Vinny's hand tightened into a fist. Marco's crew was getting bolder. He knew what came next: pressure, intimidation, attempts to exploit any perceived softness. And now he had given them something tangible, a woman and child inside his walls. He stepped out of the study, moved silently down the hall. From the landing, he could hear faint voices drifting up, Mia laughing softly at something Elena said. The sound pierced him. Laura had wanted children. They had tried. It never happened. After she died, he had buried that grief so deep he convinced himself it no longer existed. Now it clawed its way back to the surface, raw and bleeding. He descended the stairs, paused outside the guest suite door. Inside, Elena was brushing Mia's hair, slow, gentle strokes, with a comb she had found in the bathroom drawer. Mia sat cross-legged on the bed, humming a tuneless song. Elena's face was softer in the morning light, the sharp edges of hunger and exhaustion eased just enough to reveal the woman beneath. Vinny knocked lightly on the open door frame. Elena looked up, startled. "Mr. Russo." "Vinny," he corrected gently. "Just Vinny." She nodded, uncertain. "Vinny, I need to step out for a bit," he said. "Business. Won't be long. There's a security system, cameras, alarms. You'll be safe. If you need anything, press the button by the bed. It rings upstairs." Elena swallowed. "We'll be fine." He studied her for a moment longer, thin wrists, hollow cheeks, the way she kept one hand on Mia's shoulder as though ready to shield her from the world. Something fierce and protective surged through him, so intense it bordered on pain. Not romance, not possession. Something deeper: responsibility. The kind he had failed to give Laura when she needed it most. "I'll be back soon," he said. He left the house through the garage, slid into the sedan, instead of the SUV less conspicuous. As he pulled onto the quiet suburban street, he saw the dark car still parked across the way. 2 men inside. One lifted a camera. Vinny slowed, deliberately met their eyes through tinted glass. A warning without words. They did not follow. Not yet. He drove south toward the city, mind churning. The conflict inside him had grown teeth: overnight remorse for the life that had made him a target, guilt that he might have endangered Elena and Mia by bringing them here, terror that he would fail them the way he had failed before. And beneath it all, a burning need to protect them that felt almost violent in its urgency. Back in the guest suite, Elena sat beside Mia on the bed, arms wrapped around her daughter. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the heating system. She stared at the closed door, heart pounding with questions she did not dare voice aloud. Who was this man really? Why did his eyes look so haunted when he looked at Mia? And why, God help her, did some small starved part of her want to believe him? Mia leaned her head against Elena's shoulder. Mama, yes, baby, I like it here. Elena closed her eyes, tears slipping free. Me too, she whispered. Me too. But the admission terrified her more than any cold night ever had. The afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows of the guest suite, painting long rectangles of gold across the carpet. Elena Thompson sat on the edge of the bed watching Mia explore the room with the careful wonder of a child who had never known space that belonged to her. The girl ran small fingers along the smooth wooden dresser, opened drawers to find them empty, except for sachets of lavender, then moved to the window seat where she knelt and pressed her nose to the glass. Outside the backyard stretched wide, manicured lawn, stone patio, a fountain that trickled softly even in October. Mia turned, eyes shining. Mama, there's a bird bath. Can we go see it? Elena's throat tightened. Maybe later, baby. Let's rest a little first. But rest felt impossible. Every surface in the room reminded her of what she lacked. The thick duvet that still held the faint scent of clean laundry, the armchair upholstered in velvet soft fabric, the lamp with its silk shade. She had spent so many nights huddled under discarded cardboard wind, whistling through gaps in boarded windows, that this quiet luxury felt like a dream she would be punished for believing in. Her hands trembled as she smoothed the blanket over Mia's legs, hands that were too thin, knuckles, too prominent nails bitten down from months of anxiety. She had not eaten much at lunch. Vinny had left a tray outside the door, sandwiches on thick bread, sliced apples arranged in a careful fan, a thermos of soup. Elena had taken only the soup, sipping it slowly, while Mia devoured everything else. The richness of the broth sat heavy in her stomach, foreign after so long on stale crackers and watered-down oatmeal from food pantries. She felt guilty for every swallow, as though she were stealing from someone more deserving. Upstairs, Vinny stood motionless in front of the monitors. The feed from the guest suite filled one screen, Elena folding the borrowed hoodie with reverent care, Mia humming softly while stacking pillows into a makeshift fort on the floor. He had installed the cameras years ago for security habit from a life where trust was currency few could afford. Now they served a different purpose. He watched not for threats, but for proof that they were still there, still breathing, still safe. Each small movement tore at him. The way Elena's shoulders hunched when she thought no one was looking. The way Mia's laughter, rare tentative, cut through the silence of the house like sunlight through fog. Vinny pressed a palm to his chest as though he could physically hold back the ache spreading there. Remorse gnawed deeper with every passing hour. He had brought them into his world without asking if they wanted to come. He had exposed them to dangers they could not imagine. And yet the sight of them alive, warm beginning to unfurl, ignited something fierce and protective inside him. A need so intense it bordered on violence against his own restraint. He turned away from the screens, paced to the window. Below the street looked ordinary, leaf-strewn lawns, parked cars, a neighbor walking, a golden retriever. But he knew better. Marco's men had not left. The dark sedan had reappeared an hour earlier, parked 2 houses down this time. Vinny's men had spotted them. No move yet, just watching. His phone buzzed. A text from his driver. They're circling the block now. Want us to intercept, Vinny typed back. No, let them watch. I want them to see I'm not hiding. He slipped the phone into his pocket, grabbed his coat, and headed downstairs. He paused outside the guest suite door, listening. Inside, Elena spoke in low tones, reading from a children's book she had found on a shelf, something about a little engine that could. Mia's responses were soft, delighted. Vinny closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound anchor him. He knocked lightly. Elena opened the door, robe still wrapped tight around her thin frame. Her eyes widened slightly, surprise wariness, a flicker of something warmer she tried to hide. Vinny. I need to run an errand, he said. Won't be long. You'll be all right here, she nodded, voice soft. Yes, thank you. He hesitated. If you hear anything strange, anything at all, press the button by the bed. It connects straight to me. Her fingers tightened on the doorframe. Is there trouble? He met her gaze, saw the fear she tried to mask. Nothing I can't handle. He left before the lie settled too heavily between them. Outside, the air carried the crisp bite of early autumn. Vinny walked to the end of the driveway, paused at the gate. The dark sedan idled at the curb. He stepped onto the sidewalk, hands loose at his sides, and approached without haste. The driver's window lowered. A man in his 30s, sharp features, expensive watch, met Vinny's eyes. Nice neighborhood, the man said, voice oily. Didn't know you were taking in strays now. Vinny stopped 3 feet from the car. You got something to say. Say it. The man smirked. Marco sends regards. Says you're getting soft. Says maybe it's time to remind you who runs the South End. Vinny leaned in slightly. Tell Marco if he wants to talk business, he calls. If he wants to play games with women and children, he deals with me. Personally. The passenger laughed low. Big words for a guy playing house. Vinny's voice dropped. Drive away. Now. The driver stared for a long beat, then started the engine. The car pulled away slowly, taillights glowing red in the fading light. Vinny watched until they turned the corner. His hands shook not from fear, but from the effort of holding back the rage that wanted to spill over. He had spent years building control. Now every instinct screamed to protect the two people inside his house, and that need clashed violently with the life he had chosen. He returned to the house, entered through the side door. The hallway smelled faintly of soup and clean linen. He moved quietly to the study, pulled up the cameras again. Elena sat on the window seat, now Mia in her lap. The girl pointed at something outside, a squirrel darting across the lawn, and Elena laughed, a small surprised sound that made Vinny's chest seize. He sank into his chair, elbows on the desk, face in his hands. The conflict raged louder inside him. Guilt for the shadows he carried, terror that those shadows would reach them, and beneath it, a burning attachment that had taken root the moment he saw Mia's trusting eyes on that freezing street. It was not romance. It was something fiercer, the fierce aching need to be the shield they had never had, the father figure he had never been allowed to become. Downstairs, Elena held Mia close, watching the same squirrel. The warmth of the room, the safety of the walls, the absence of wind, it overwhelmed her. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent and hot. She had spent so many nights promising Mia, tomorrow will be better, knowing it was a lie. Now tomorrow felt possible, and the possibility terrified her more than any eviction notice ever had. She whispered into Mia's hair, "We're okay, baby. For now, we're okay." Mia looked up. "He's nice, Mama. Like a grandpa in the stories." Elena's heart cracked wider. "Maybe," she murmured. "Maybe he is." She wiped her eyes, looked toward the ceiling as though she could see through it to the man watching over them. Suspicion still lingered, sharp and familiar, but beneath it, trust was growing slow, painful, unstoppable, like a seed pushing through concrete. Vinny watched the moment on the screen, Elena's tears, Mia's small hand patting her mother's cheek. He exhaled, ragged and broken. He had isolated himself for years to keep pain at bay. Now pain had found him anyway, in the shape of a mother and daughter who needed him more than he had ever been needed. And he would burn the world down before he let them go back to the cold. The evening settled over the house like a heavy blanket, the October sky outside turning the color of bruised steel. Inside the guest suite, Elena Thompson sat cross-legged on the carpet, Mia asleep in her lap with cheeks flushed from the warmth of the room. Elena had found a soft throw blanket cashmere, impossibly light, and draped it over them both. The texture against her skin felt wrong, too gentle, too forgiving. She kept smoothing it down as though the act could anchor her in a reality that refused to make sense. Dinner had arrived on another tray: roast chicken, mashed potatoes with real butter, steamed green beans, a slice of chocolate cake so rich it made her dizzy just looking at it. Mia had eaten with wide-eyed delight, licking gravy from her fingers without shame. Elena had taken small bites, each one tasting like guilt. She had once stood in line for hours at a soup kitchen, only to be told they had run out 5 minutes before her turn. Now food appeared without asking, hot and plentiful, and the memory of that empty bowl still burned behind her eyes. She lifted Mia carefully, laid her on the bed, tucked the covers around her small body. The girl sighed in her sleep, one hand curling near her cheek. Elena stood over her for a long moment, watching the rise and fall of her chest. The quiet was profound, no sirens, no shouting neighbors, no wind rattling loose window panes. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt fragile, like glass waiting to shatter. She moved to the window seat, drew her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. The backyard lights glowed softly, illuminating the stone fountain, the trimmed hedges, the empty swing set that looked as though it had never been used. The disparity pressed against her ribs, her own life of scavenged blankets and hunger cramps against this silent, opulent world. She felt small, unworthy, humiliated by how desperately she wanted to stay. Upstairs, Vinny Russo paced the length of his study, footsteps muffled by the thick Persian rug. The monitors showed Elena at the window, face half in, shadow eyes distant. He stopped, stared at the screen until his vision blurred. The sight of her thin shoulders, hunched fingers white-knuckled around her knees sent fresh waves of torment through him. He had watched her on those feeds for hours now, cataloging every small gesture, the way she touched Mia's hair, as though afraid the child might vanish, the way she hesitated before eating, the way her gaze flicked toward the door every bon, few minutes still waiting for the catch. He sank into his chair, elbows on the desk, head in his hands. The conflict inside him had grown teeth sharper than any he had known before. Remorse clawed at him for the years he had spent building an empire on fear and silence. Guilt tore deeper for bringing Elena and Mia into the crosshairs of that empire. And beneath it all burned an attachment so fierce it frightened him, an overwhelming, almost violent need to shield them, to be the wall between them and every cold night they had ever endured. It was not desire in the ordinary sense. It was the desperate, aching urge to give them what Laura had once given him: safety, belief, the chance to believe the world could be kind. His phone vibrated on the desk. A message from one of his men. 3 cars now. They're blocking the side street. Marco's crew. They want a word. Vinny's jaw locked. He stood, shrugged into his coat, checked the pistol in the shoulder holster out of long habit. He paused at the study door, glanced back at the monitor. Elena had moved to the bed, curled beside Mia, one arm draped protectively over her daughter. The image pierced him. He could not let this touch them. He descended the stairs, quietly slipped out through the garage. The night air bit at his face. He walked the perimeter of the property, boots silent on the grass. At the rear gate, he spotted them, 3 dark sedans idling in the side street, engines, low headlights off. He stepped onto the sidewalk, hands visible, posture calm. One door opened. A man stepped out, mid-40s, leather jacket, gold chain glinting under a street lamp. Marco's second in command. "Vinny," the man said, voice carrying false warmth. "You've been hard to reach." Vinny stopped 10 feet away. "You found me." The man gestured toward the house. "Heard you picked up some baggage. Single mom. Little girl. Cute. Makes a man vulnerable." Vinny's voice stayed even. "You threaten them. You threaten me. You know how that ends." The man smiled thinly. "Marco just wants to talk business. Says you've been distracted. Says maybe it's time to step aside." Vinny took 1 step closer. "Tell Marco if he wants my seat, he comes himself. Not through women and children." The man's smile faded. "Careful, Russo. Soft spots get you killed." Vinny met his gaze without blinking. "Drive away. Last warning." Silence stretched. Then the man laughed, once short and cold, climbed back into the car. Engines revved. The 3 sedans pulled away slowly, taillights disappearing into the dark. Vinny stood there until the street was empty again. His hands shook, not with fear, but with the effort of containing the rage that wanted to explode. He had spent decades convincing himself control was strength. Now every instinct screamed to eliminate the threat before it could reach the 2 people sleeping inside his walls. The conflict raged, protector versus predator, the man Laura had loved versus the man he had become. He returned to the house, entered through the side door. The hallway was dim, lit only by wall sconces. He paused outside the guest suite. The door was ajar. Inside, Elena sat on the floor beside the bed, back against the frame, knees drawn up. She was crying quiet, shoulder-shaking sobs she tried to muffle against her sleeve. Vinny froze. He should have walked away. Instead, he pushed the door open wider, stepped inside. Elena looked up, startled, tears streaking her face. She wiped them quickly, voice small and hoarse. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize," he said gently. He crouched a respectful distance away. "You don't have to hide it here." She stared at him, eyes red-rimmed, confusion and fear warring with something deeper. "Why are you doing this? Really, Vinny?" exhaled slowly. "Because I saw you on that street and I saw Mia's eyes and something in me broke. I couldn't walk away. I couldn't let you go back to that cold." Elena's breath hitched. "We're nothing to you. You're everything I failed to be for someone once," he said quietly. "And I won't fail again." The words hung between them. Elena's tears fell faster. She pressed a hand to her mouth, shoulders trembling. The humiliation of her past, of begging for scraps, of watching Mia shiver through nights when the wind felt like knives crashed against the reality of this moment. A powerful man kneeling before her eyes, filled with remorse and fierce protectiveness. She whispered, "I don't know how to trust this." "I know," he said, "but you don't have to trust me yet. Just stay. Let me keep you safe. Let me try." Elena looked at Mia sleeping peacefully, then back at Vinny. Something inside her shifted, violent, tearing, irreversible. Suspicion cracked. In its place surged an overwhelming attachment, burning and sudden, the desperate gratitude of someone who had never been chosen before. She nodded, once small and trembling. "Okay." Vinny stood slowly, throat tight. He moved to the door, paused. "Good night, Elena." "Good night," she whispered. He left, closing the door softly behind him. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall, eyes closed, chest heaving. The first twist had come not in gunfire, but in the quiet breaking of 2 hearts, learning to trust again. Outside, the dark sedans circled once more in the distance. Vinny straightened, resolve hardening. Whatever came next, he would face it. For them, the next morning broke gray and heavy clouds pressing low against the Chicago skyline visible from the upstairs windows. Elena Thompson woke to the faint clink of dishes in the kitchen downstairs, someone preparing breakfast, the smell of coffee and bacon drifting up like an impossible promise. She lay still for a long moment, listening to Mia's steady breathing beside her. The child's face was relaxed in sleep, lips slightly parted, one small hand resting on the pillow as though holding on to a dream. Elena reached out, brushed a strand of hair from Mia's forehead, and felt the familiar ache bloom in her chest, gratitude so sharp it hurt, fear so deep it numbed. She slipped from the bed, wrapped the robe around her thin frame, and padded barefoot to the bathroom. The mirror showed a stranger, cheeks less hollow after 2 full meals, eyes brighter despite the shadows beneath them. She splashed water on her face, the coolness shocking against skin that had known only cold taps in public restrooms for months. Every luxury in this house felt stolen, the thick towels, the heated floor tiles, the quiet that let her think without bracing for the next crisis. Downstairs, Vinny stood at the island in the kitchen, sleeves rolled to his elbows, pouring orange juice into 2 glasses. He had not slept. The confrontation the night before lingered like smoke in his lungs, the rival's smirk, the casual threat wrapped in concern for vulnerability. He had stared at the ceiling until dawn, replaying every word, every glance. The rage had not faded. It had hardened into something colder, more focused. He would protect them. He had to. The alternative, imagining Elena and Mia back on those freezing streets, was unbearable. He heard her footsteps before he saw her. Elena appeared in the doorway, hesitant arms crossed over her chest as though shielding herself from the room itself. "Good morning," he said quietly. She nodded, voice soft. "Good morning, Vinny." Mia bounded in behind her hair, tousled eyes bright. "It smells like pancakes," Vinny managed a small smile. "They're almost ready. Sit." Elena helped Mia onto a stool, then perched on the edge of her own hands, folded tightly in her lap. The kitchen gleamed granite counters, stainless appliances, a bowl of fresh fruit that looked too perfect to touch. She felt the old humiliation rise again, the memory of digging through dumpsters behind restaurants for scraps of Mia, asking why other kids had lunchboxes while hers was an empty plastic bag. Now abundance surrounded her, and the contrast tore at her insides. Vinny set plates in front of them, golden pancake syrup and a small pitcher bacon crisp on the side. Mia dove in with delight. Elena took a careful bite, chewed slowly. The sweetness exploded on her tongue. Tears pricked her eyes without warning. Vinny noticed. He set his coffee down. "Elena," she shook her head, swallowed hard. "It's nothing. It's good." He watched her for a long moment. The silence stretched thick with unspoken things. After breakfast, Mia asked to play in the backyard. Elena hesitated, but Vinny nodded. "It's safe. Go ahead." Mother and daughter stepped outside. The air was crisp leaves crunching underfoot. Mia ran to the swing set, laughing as she pumped her legs. Elena stood at the edge of the patio, arms wrapped around herself, watching her daughter with a mixture of joy and terror. This could end. It always ended. Inside, Vinny's phone buzzed. A message from his driver, Marcos, at the coffee shop on Elm. "Alone. Says he wants to talk. Now." Vinny's grip tightened. He glanced out the window, Elena lifting Mia onto the swing, the girls' laughter carrying on the wind. He could not let this touch them. He grabbed his coat. "I have to step out," he called through the open door. "Won't be long. Stay inside the fence." Elena turned eyes wide with sudden anxiety. "Is everything okay?" He met her gaze. "It will be." He drove the short distance to the coffee shop parked across the street. Marco waited at an outdoor table coat, open cigarette between his fingers. Vinny crossed the road, sat without invitation. Marco exhaled smoke. "You look tired, Vinny. Family life wearing you down." Vinny leaned forward. "Cut the games." "What do you want?" Marco tapped Ash onto the sidewalk. "Your attention. You've been distracted. Taking in strays. Makes people talk. Makes people think you're weak." Vinny's voice stayed level. "They're under my protection. Touch them and it's war." Marco smiled. "War's expensive. And you're not the man you used to be." Vinny stood slowly. "Test me. See." He walked away before Marco could reply, pulse hammering. The confrontation had not resolved anything, only sharpened the edges. Back at the house, he found Elena in the living room, Mia napping on the couch beside her. Elena looked up as he entered, relief flickering across her face, then wariness. "You're back," she said softly. He nodded, sat in the armchair opposite. "Elena, there's something you need to know." She tensed. "What?" He exhaled. "The people who followed us that first night, they're not random. They're part of my world. A rival. He's pushing, testing boundaries. Because of me, you're in the middle." Elena's face drained of color. She glanced at Mia, then back at him. "You knew this when you brought us here. I knew the risk," he admitted. "But I couldn't leave you on that street." Her hands shook. "We could have managed. We always have. You were freezing. Starving. Mia was sick last month, you told me in the car. You were going to lose her if you stayed out there." Tears welled. "Don't." Vinny leaned forward, voice rough. "I'm telling you because I won't lie to you. Not anymore. I'll end this. I'll keep you safe. But you deserve to know why I'm fighting." Elena pressed a hand to her mouth. The room spun dizziness, shock, the violent collision of terror and trust. She had spent years surviving alone, guarding her heart against hope. Now this man, wealthy, powerful, dangerous, sat before her, offering protection, remorse in every line of his face. The disparity crushed her thin wrists, her hollow cheeks against his broad shoulders, his quiet command of the room. She whispered, "Why me? Why us?" Vinny looked away, throat working. "Because Mia looks at the world like it could still be good. And you fight for her every day. I see it. I see what I never gave anyone." Elena's tears fell. "I'm scared." "I know," he said. "I'm scared too." Silence settled heavy and intimate. Then Elena reached out, hesitant, trembling, and placed her hand over his on the armrest. The touch was small, electric. Trust surged through her, passionate and burning, overwhelming the fear that had defined her for so long. Vinny stared at their joined hands. Something inside him shattered remorse, gilt the walls he had built after Laura. He turned his palm up, closed, his fingers gently around hers. The second twist came quietly in that stillness. Elena's soft voice barely above a whisper. "Vinny, Mia, she's yours." He froze. What Elena pulled a folded paper from her robe pocket, creased, worn a DNA test result from 3 years earlier. "I never told you. I was afraid. Your life, I thought she'd be safer without you knowing. But she's yours. Your daughter." Vinny stared at the paper, then at Mia, sleeping peacefully on the couch. The world tilted. Joy, horror, guilt crashed together in a violent wave. He had a daughter. All these years. And he had never known. He looked at Elena, eyes burning. "Why now? Because you're already protecting her," she whispered. "Because she calls you nice. Because I can't keep lying when you're risking everything." Vinny's breath shuddered out. He released her hand, stood paced to the window. The backyard looked the same, ordinary, serene. Inside him, everything had changed. He turned back. "She's mine." Elena nodded, tears streaming. "She's yours." He crossed the room, knelt beside the couch, studied Mia's sleeping face. The resemblance was there, the shape of the eyes, the stubborn chin. He reached out, brushed a fingertip across her cheek. A sob caught in his throat. Elena watched, heartbreaking and mending in the same breath. She had carried this secret alone, through evictions, hunger nights, when wind howled like judgment. Now the truth lay between them, raw and irreversible. Vinny looked up at her. "I won't fail her. I won't fail either of you." Elena's voice cracked. "I believe you." Outside, a dark car slowed at the curb, then drove on. The threat had not vanished. But inside the house, something new had been born. A family fragile and fierce, forged in the crucible of truth. The house fell into an unnatural hush after the revelation, as though the walls themselves held their breath. Afternoon light filtered through the living room windows, in pale, slanting beams, catching dust motes that drifted like forgotten secrets. Mia remained asleep on the couch, small chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm, unaware that the world had shifted beneath her in the space of a few whispered words. Elena Thompson sat frozen in the armchair, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles blanched white. The DNA paper lay crumpled between them on the coffee table, edges worn from years of secret carrying. She stared at it without seeing, mind reeling through a storm of memories, the night she had learned she was pregnant alone, in a cramped studio apartment with peeling paint and no heat. The months she had hidden her growing belly under oversized coats while waitressing double shifts. The day she had held the test results in trembling fingers and decided Vinny could never know because his life was shadows and hers was already too dark to add more. Vinny Russo knelt beside the couch, one large hand resting lightly on the cushion near Mia's shoulder, not quite touching. His face was a mask of controlled devastation, eyes fixed on his daughter's sleeping features, tracing the curve of her cheek, the stubborn set of her mouth that mirrored his own in childhood photographs. He kept locked in a drawer. Joy clashed violently with guilt inside him, a collision so brutal it stole his breath. He had a daughter. Flesh and blood. 7 years of birthdays missed, of scraped knees untended, of bedtime stories never told. 7 years of nights when Mia had cried from hunger or cold while he sat in this very house, surrounded by wealth that could have changed everything. He pressed his forehead to the couch, cushioned shoulders shaking once silently. Remorse surged through him like acid gnawing, relentless, tearing open old wounds he thought had scarred over. Laura had wanted children. They had planned names, painted a nursery that remained empty. After her death, he had buried that longing so deep he convinced himself it no longer existed. Now it roared back, demanding atonement he did not know how to give. Elena watched him, tears slipping down her cheeks in slow, soundless tracks. She wanted to reach out to offer comfort, but her arms felt leaden. The disparity between them had never felt sharper, her thin body still marked by months of malnutrition, ribs visible beneath the borrowed sweater, against his broad frame, clothed in fabric that cost more than she had earned in a year. She had begged strangers for change on street corners, slept under bridges, while wind sliced through her coat like knives rationed every crumb so Mia could eat. Now she sat in a room larger than any apartment she had ever rented, watching a powerful man weep for the child she had kept from him. The silence stretched, until it hurt. Vinny lifted his head at last. His voice came out rough, cracked. "How did you manage alone?" Elena swallowed. "I worked. I borrowed. I did what I had to." Her words faltered. "There were nights I thought we wouldn't make it. The shelter turned us away because the wait list was too long. We slept in the laundromat after closing once the manager let us stay until the lights went out. Mia got sick that winter. Fever so high I thought I'd lose her. I held her in my arms and promised her tomorrow would be better. I lied to her, Vinny. Every day I lied." He closed his eyes. The image seared him. Mia burning with fever. Elena rocking her in the dark, powerless and terrified. He had been here in this house reviewing contracts, drinking coffee that cost $20 a pound while his own child suffered. "I should have known," he whispered. "I should have looked." "You couldn't have," she said softly. "I made sure of it." He looked at her, then really looked. Saw the exhaustion etched into every line of her face, the way her hands still trembled from years of carrying too much alone. Something fierce and protective surged through him again, hotter than before, burning away the last remnants of distance. "I'm here now," he said, "and I'm not leaving." Elena's breath hitched. She nodded, unable to speak. Outside the day darkened early. Vinny rose, moved to the window. A black SUV idled at the end of the block, Marco's men again bolder now, headlights cutting through the dusk like accusations. He felt the old instincts rise, eliminate the threat, protect what was his. But the stakes had changed. Everything had changed. He turned back to Elena. "They're watching. They know something's different. I need to end this tonight." Her eyes widened. "Vinny, I won't bring violence here," he said quickly. "But I have to meet them. On my terms." She stood unsteady, crossed the room to him. "Take someone with you. Please." He looked down at her, small, fragile, yet unbreakable. He reached out, brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The touch was gentle, reverent. "I will." Mia stirred on the couch, murmuring in her sleep. Vinny knelt again, pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, the first he had ever given her. The gesture broke something inside him wide open. Tears slipped free. He did not try to hide them. Elena watched, heart shattering and reforming in the same breath. She stepped closer, placed her hand on his shoulder. "She'll wake up soon. She'll want to know why you're sad." Vinny looked up at her. "I'll tell her I'm happy. Because I am." Elena's voice trembled. "Vinny, thank you. For seeing us. For staying." He stood slowly, pulled her into a careful embrace, not possessive but steady anchoring. She stiffened at first, then melted against him, sobs muffled against his chest. Years of isolation, of carrying burdens alone, poured out in that quiet moment. She clung to him as though he were the only solid thing left in her world. He held her tighter. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered. "Neither of you." The embrace lasted until Mia's sleepy voice broke the stillness. Mama Elena pulled back, wiped her face quickly. She crossed to the couch, lifted Mia into her arms. The girl rubbed her eyes, looked from her mother to Vinny. "Why are you crying?" she asked Vinny. He managed a small broken smile. "Because I'm happy, kiddo. Really happy." Mia reached out. Vinny took her hand, small fingers curling around his. The contact sent a jolt through him, joy so intense it hurt, love so sudden and complete it stole his breath. Elena watched them, tears falling anew. Trust had become something deeper now, attachment fierce and burning, the kind that reshaped entire lives in moments. Vinny stood. "I have to go, but I'll be back before dark." Elena nodded, clutching Mia close. "Be careful." He paused at the door, looked back at them, his daughter, his... Elena. The word felt too small for what he felt, but it was true nonetheless. Outside, he climbed into his car. The black SUV followed as he drove toward the industrial district near the river neutral ground, away from the house. He parked in an empty lot, stepped out. 3 men waited under a flickering street lamp, Marco in the center, flanked by enforcers. Marco stepped forward. "You wanted to talk." Vinny's voice was calm, deadly quiet. "You threatened my family. That ends tonight." Marco laughed. "Family? Since when do you have family, Russo?" "Since now," Vinny said. "And if you come near them again, I'll burn everything you've built. Every contract, every connection. I'll go to the feds with names you thought were buried. Walk away, Marco." Last chance. Silence. Then Marco's smile faded. He studied Vinny, saw the change, the unbreakable resolve. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "You're serious," Marco said. "Deadly." Marco exhaled. "This isn't over. It is for them," Vinny replied. Marco turned, signaled his men. They retreated to their car, drove away into the gathering dark. Vinny stood alone in the empty lot, wind whipping around him. He looked up at the sky, stars beginning to pierce the clouds. For the first time in years, he felt something like peace. He drove home faster than he should have, heart pounding with urgency. When he stepped through the door, Elena waited in the hallway, Mia already in pajamas rubbing her eyes. Vinny knelt. Mia ran to him, threw her arms around his neck. "You came back." He held her, close tears slipping into her hair. "Always, kiddo. Always." Elena stood behind them, watching father and daughter embrace. Her own tears fell freely now, not from fear, but from a love so deep it terrified, and healed her in equal measure. The house, once silent and guarded, filled with quiet voices, soft laughter, the sound of a family beginning to heal. Outside, the city lights glittered indifferent. Inside, everything had changed. The days that followed blurred into a gentle rhythm the house had never known before. October 2025 wore on with crisp mornings and early dusks. The leaves outside, turning shades of amber and crimson that Mia pointed to with delighted gasps every time she looked out the window. Elena Thompson moved through the rooms like someone learning to walk again after years of limping, slow, tentative testing each step against the fear that the ground might vanish beneath her. She had begun to eat without hesitation. Breakfast trays appeared each morning, fresh fruit sliced into perfect halves, warm oatmeal with cinnamon and brown sugar eggs cooked exactly how Mia liked them. Elena no longer rationed bites or saved half for later. Yet every time she lifted a fork, the memory surfaced unbidden, standing in a food pantry line that wrapped around the block, only to be told the shelves were empty, Mia's small hand in hers growing colder with every passing minute. The contrast still struck like a physical blow, her daughter now reaching for seconds without asking, cheeks filling out day by day, while Elena's own body still carried the faint tremor of prolonged hunger. Vinny watched them both from doorways, from across rooms, from the bank of monitors he could no longer bring himself to turn off completely. He had reduced the feeds to one screen now, the guest suite mostly, though he no longer needed to watch for danger so much as to reassure himself they were still there, still safe, still his. The word his settled in his chest like a stone warmed by fire, painful, precious, permanent. He had started small rituals without naming them. Each evening he read to Mia before bed children's books from the shelf Laura had once chosen for a nursery that never filled. Mia curled against his side on the wide couch, small fingers tracing pictures of trains and rabbits, asking questions in her soft, curious voice. "Why does the rabbit keep trying, Vinny?" she asked one night. "Because he believes he can," Vinny answered, throat tight. "Even when everyone says he can't." Mia looked up at him with eyes so like his own it stole his breath. "Do you believe I can?" He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I know you can, kiddo." Elena watched these moments from the doorway, arms folded, tears slipping silently. She had spent so many nights singing lullabies to Mia in abandoned doorways, voice cracking from cold and exhaustion, promising a future she could not deliver. Now Vinny gave her daughter stories in steady arms, and the gratitude inside Elena burned so fiercely it bordered on pain. She had gone from invisible, ignored by caseworkers, dismissed by landlords, pitied by strangers to seen, truly seen. The shift left her dizzy, off balance, as though the world had tilted, and she had not yet found her footing. One afternoon she found herself in the kitchen alone. Vinny had taken Mia to the backyard to rake leaves into piles for jumping. Elena stood at the island, fingers tracing the smooth granite, staring at the bowl of apples that never seemed to empty. She lifted one, turned it in her hand. Red, perfect, untouched. She thought of the bruised fruit she had once salvaged from market dumpsters, cutting away mold so Mia could have something sweet. Tears fell onto the counter, hot, sudden, unstoppable. Vinny returned through the side door leaves, clinging to his sweater, Mia giggling behind him. He stopped when he saw Elena's shoulders shaking. "Elena," she turned away quickly, wiping her face with her sleeve. "It's nothing." He crossed the room in 3 strides, gentle but insistent. "Talk to me." She shook her head, voice small. "I keep waiting for it to end, for someone to take this away. I've never had anything stay." Vinny reached out, hesitated, then rested his hands lightly on her arms. "This stays," he said quietly. "You stay. Mia stays. I'm not letting go." She looked up at him, eyes red-rimmed, vulnerable, searching. "Why does it feel like too much because you carried everything alone for so long?" he answered. "And now you don't have to." Elena's breath shuddered out. She leaned forward, forehead resting against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, careful, steady, protective. She clung to him as though he were the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. Years of cold, nights of hunger that gnawed. Like an animal of nights, she had whispered apologies to Mia for failing her. The weight poured out in silent sobs against his sweater. Vinny held her tighter. Guilt and remorse surged through him in violent waves. He had wealth, endless, obscene wealth, while his own daughter had known hunger. He had power that could have changed everything, yet he had known nothing of her existence. The self-loathing was so intense, it felt like a blade twisting in his ribs. Yet beneath it burned something brighter: love for this woman who had protected his child alone, fierce and unwavering. Love for the daughter he had only just met, but already could not imagine life without. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Vinny glanced toward the street through the glass. A familiar dark sedan slowed at the curb, paused, then moved on. Marco had not retreated entirely. The threat lingered like smoke. That night after Mia slept, Vinny stepped outside alone. The air bit sharp against his skin. He walked to the end of the driveway, stood beneath a street lamp. The sedan returned, slow, deliberate. Vinny waited. The window lowered. Marco's second-in-command leaned out. "You think one conversation ends," this Vinny's voice carried across the quiet street. "It ends for them. You come near my family again and I end you." The man laughed once low and mocking. "Family? Cute. Marco says you've gone soft." Vinny stepped closer. "Tell Marco I've gone something else. Tell him I'm done playing. Tell him if he wants war he'll get it, but my daughter stays out of it." Silence. Then the window rose. The car pulled away. Vinny stood there until the taillights vanished. His hands shook, not from cold, but from the effort of holding back the storm inside him. He had spent decades building walls of control. Now those walls cracked under the weight of what he had to lose. He returned inside. Elena waited in the hallway, robe pulled tight, eyes wide with worry. "You went out," she whispered. "Had to make something clear," he said. She crossed to him, placed her hand on his arm. "You're shaking." He looked down at her, thin, resilient, beautiful in her quiet strength. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "Of losing you both. Of not being enough." Elena rose on her toes, pressed her forehead to his. "You already are." They stood like that in the dim hallway, breathing together. The house around them felt alive. Warmth from the fireplace, the faint scent of pine from the candles Elena had lit earlier, the soft creak of floorboards settling. For the first time, Vinny allowed himself to feel the possibility of peace. Later, in the quiet of the study, he opened his laptop. Not to check cameras or review threats, but to search private schools, pediatricians, trust funds, ways to secure a future for Mia that had nothing to do with the shadows he carried. He worked until dawn, pages of notes filling the screen, each one a vow. Down the hall, Elena lay beside her sleeping daughter, listening to the house breathe around them. She reached out, touched Mia's cheek, then whispered into the dark, "We're home, baby. We're finally home." Tears slipped down her temples into the pillow. Not from sorrow, but from a healing so profound it ached. Outside, the city slept under a blanket of stars. Inside, a family broken remade began to believe in tomorrow. The first hard frost of late October 2025 arrived overnight, coating the lawn in silver and turning every breath into visible mist. Inside the house, the warmth held steady, radiant heat in the floors, fireplaces lit low and steady, blankets folded at the ends of every couch like quiet invitations to rest. Elena Thompson woke to the soft clink of a spoon against porcelain downstairs, and the faint scent of cinnamon drifting up the stairs. She lay still for a moment, listening to Mia's, even breathing beside her, then slipped from the bed and pulled on the thick robe that no longer felt foreign against her skin. She had gained a little weight enough that her collarbones no longer stood out so sharply enough that her hands no longer trembled when she lifted a cup. Yet every morning still carried the ghost of hunger, the instinctive calculation of how long food might last, the reflex to hide an extra roll in a napkin just in case. Those habits died slowly, like old scars that itched when the weather changed. Downstairs, Vinny stood at the stove in a dark sweater, flipping pancakes with careful concentration. Mia perched on a stool at the island, chin in hands, watching him with unabashed fascination. When Elena appeared in the doorway, Mia's face lit up. Mama Vinny's making smiley face ones. Elena managed a small smile. "They look perfect, baby." Vinny glanced over his shoulder. "Morning. Coffee's ready." She crossed to the counter, poured a mug, wrapped her hands around the warmth. The simple domesticity still disoriented her, someone else cooking, someone else remembering she liked cream but no sugar, someone else making sure Mia ate before school preparations began. She had once spent entire days walking blocks to find a free breakfast program, only to arrive after the last tray was cleared. The memory pressed against her ribs like a bruise that refused to fade. Vinny set plates down. Mia attacked hers with glee. Elena ate more slowly, watching father and daughter. The sight still stole her breath, Vinny's large hand steadying Mia's glass so she didn't spill the way he listened, really listened when she talked about the squirrel she had named outside the window. Gratitude surged through Elena again, fierce and almost painful, tangled with the lingering fear that this could still be taken away. After breakfast, Vinny drove Mia to a small private academy. He had quietly enrolled her in uniforms, ordered books, delivered tuition, paid in full before Elena could protest. She had cried in the hallway the first day, overwhelmed by the crisp blazer and pleated skirt by the backpack that smelled of new fabric instead of hand-me-down mildew. Vinny had knelt in front of Mia, adjusted the straps, told her she looked like she could conquer anything. Elena had turned away so he wouldn't see her tears. Now, with the house quiet, Elena wandered into Vinny's study for the first time uninvited. The room smelled of leather and old books. She hesitated at the desk, eyes catching on a small, framed photograph, half hidden behind a stack of files. A younger Vinny and Laura, arms around each other, laughing on a beach somewhere warm. Elena touched the frame lightly, heart twisting. She understood loss. She had lived it every day since Mia's father disappeared. But seeing Vinny's grief made tangible, frozen in silver, made her own past feel both smaller and heavier. She turned to leave and noticed the open laptop. A single document remained on screen, a list of names, dates, bank accounts, locations, carefully annotated in Vinny's precise handwriting. At the top, Marco, leverage points. At the bottom, consigliere, full audit pending. Her stomach dropped. She closed the laptop quickly, as though she had seen something forbidden. Vinny returned an hour later. He found Elena in the living room, curled in an armchair, staring at nothing. Mia was upstairs changing out of her school clothes. "Everything okay?" he asked. She looked up. "I saw the list on your computer." He exhaled, slowly sat opposite her. "I didn't want you to see that yet." "Who's the consigliere?" Vinny rubbed a hand over his face. "My right hand. Been with me since the beginning. Like a brother. Or so I thought." Elena's voice stayed soft, careful. "You don't trust him anymore." "I don't trust anyone completely," he said. "But him, I trusted most." She nodded slowly. "Because of us. Because of you," he corrected quietly. "Because of Mia. I started digging after Marco's last visit. Something felt off. Too many coincidences. Too many leaks only someone close could know." Elena's hands tightened in her lap. "What did you find?" Vinny looked away, jaw working. "Enough to make me sick. Bank transfers. Meetings with Marco's people. Old records going back years. He knew about Laura's routines, where she shopped, when she was alone." Elena's breath caught. "Vinny." "He set it up," Vinny said, voice raw. "The hit that killed her. For power. For the chair. And he's been waiting, watching for me to show weakness. Then you and Mia appeared. Perfect leverage." Elena pressed a hand to her mouth. Horror washed over her, cold, numbing, dizzying. She had brought this danger into his life without knowing. She had hidden his daughter for years, thinking she was protecting her, only to deliver her straight into a trap laid by the man Vinny had called family. Vinny stood abruptly, paced to the window. "I confronted him this morning. Quiet meeting. No witnesses. He denied it at first, smooth like always. Then I showed him the transfers. The dates. The proof." Elena rose, crossed to him. "What happened?" He laughed. Vinny said bitterly. "Said I'd gone soft. Said Laura was collateral. Said Mia would be next if I didn't step aside." Elena's knees buckled. Vinny caught her, lowered her to the window seat. She shook her head, tears streaming. "This is my fault. I should never have. No." His voice cracked like thunder held back. "None of this is on you. He chose this. Years ago. Long before you." She clutched his sleeves. "What are you going to do?" Vinny looked down at her, eyes burning with a fury so deep it terrified her and steadied her at once. "I'm going to end it. Tonight. Not with blood if I can help it." But he doesn't walk away clean. Elena searched his face. "You're scared. Terrified," he admitted. "Not of him. Of losing you both. Of failing you the way I failed, Laura." She cupped his face with trembling hands. "You won't. You're not the same man you were then." He closed his eyes, leaned into her touch. "I love you," he whispered, simple, raw, inevitable. "Both of you. More than I knew I could." Elena's breath shuddered. "We love you too." They sat in silence, foreheads touching, hearts pounding in unison. The betrayal had ripped open every wound Vinny carried, remorse for trusting the wrong man, guilt for not seeing the danger sooner, rage so violent it shook his bones. Yet in Elena's arms, in the quiet knowledge that Mia slept safely upstairs, something stronger took root, determination forged in love, unbreakable. That night after Mia was in bed, Vinny left the house. Elena waited in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself, listening to the clock tick. Hours passed. She paced. She prayed. These seven her read, she remembered every cold night she had survived, every time she had carried Mia through wind that felt like punishment, and told herself she could survive this weight too. Vinny returned just before dawn, coat torn at the sleeve, a bruise blooming along his jaw, eyes hollow but steady. Elena ran to him. He caught her, held her tight. "It's done," he said against her hair. He confessed. "Everything. Recordings. Witnesses. He's finished. Marco's crew is crumbling. The feds have what they need. Elena pulled back, searched his face. You're hurt. Worth it, he said. She touched the bruise gently. No more. No more, he promised. They stood together in the dim hallway as the first light of morning crept through the windows. The house breathed around them, warm, safe, whole. Vinny had lost a brother he never truly had, but he had gained a family he would die to protect. And in that quiet, shattering dawn, the betrayal that had nearly destroyed him became the final break that set him free. The last week of October, 2025, arrived with relentless rain that drummed against the tall windows and turned the suburban streets into slick, reflective mirrors. Inside the house, the warmth felt almost defiant, fires crackling in every hearth lamps, glowing soft gold against the gray, outside the faint scent of cinnamon and cedar clinging to every room. Yet beneath the surface, calm tension coiled tighter with each passing hour. Elena Thompson moved through the days like someone carrying fragile glass. She had begun small routines that felt both miraculous and terrifying, folding Mia's school uniforms with careful hands, setting the table for 3 instead of 2 standing at the kitchen island, while Vinny made dinner and letting herself lean against him when he passed behind her. Each ordinary moment carried the weight of everything she had lost and everything she now feared losing again. She still woke some nights gasping from dreams of cold concrete and empty food pantries, reaching instinctively for Mia only to find her safe and warm beside her. The relief was so sharp it hurt. Mia had blossomed in ways that broke Elena's heart anew every day. Color returned to her cheeks. Her laughter came easier, louder. She ran through the house without looking over her shoulder. Yet she clung to Vinny with a fierce, wordless devotion, climbing into his lap during story time, tucking her small hand into his whenever they walked from room to room, asking him questions about everything, from why leaves changed color to whether he would always be there when she woke up. Each question landed like a stone in Vinny's chest, cracking open layers of remorse he thought he had already faced. He had not slept more than 3 hours at a stretch since the night he confronted his consigliere. The recording sat encrypted on a drive in his safe enough evidence to bury Marco's entire operation and send the man who had once been his closest advisor to prison for life. Yet the betrayal festered. Vinny replayed every conversation, every shared meal, every late-night strategy session, searching for the moment he should have seen the knife coming. The self-loathing was so intense it felt physical, a constant pressure behind his ribs, a heat that never cooled. He kept the house locked down tighter than ever. Extra men patrolled the perimeter, quiet, professional, out of sight. Cameras recorded every angle, yet Marco's silence felt louder than any threat. No cars lingered at the curb anymore. No messages arrived. Just absence. Waiting. The storm broke on a Thursday evening. Elena was reading to Mia in the living room. Soft voices lamplight the rain, a steady background murmur when the first alert chimed on Vinny's phone. Motion sensors at the rear gate, then the side gate, then the front. Vinny appeared in the doorway, face calm but eyes burning. Upstairs. Now. Guest suite. Lock the door. Stay away from the windows. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs. She lifted Mia without a word, carried her up the stairs on legs that felt numb. Mia sensed the shift clung tighter, whispered, Mama, what's wrong? Just a game, baby, Elena lied, voice cracking. Hide and seek with Vinny. She locked the bedroom door, pushed a heavy chair against it, then pulled Mia into the walk-in closet among soft sweaters and hanging coats. They sat on the floor, backs to the wall, Elena's arms wrapped around her daughter like armor. Rain hammered the roof. Distant voices, Vinny's men shouted commands outside. Downstairs, Vinny moved through the darkened house like a shadow. He had sent most of his security to the perimeter. Only 2 remained inside with him. The alarms went silent one by one, cut wires bypassed systems. Professional work. Marco had not come to talk. Vinny reached the foyer just as the front door splintered inward. 3 men stepped through black tactical gear, suppressed pistols raised. Marco followed, last coat, open face calm. Vinny, he said, almost conversational. You really thought recordings would stop this. Vinny stood motionless in the center of the foyer, hands visible. You're in my house. With my family upstairs. Walk away. Marco smiled thinly. Your family. That's the problem. You've gone domestic. Weak. The men see it. The streets see it. Time for new leadership. Vinny's voice stayed even. You want the chair, take it. But you don't touch them. Marco gestured. One of his men started toward the stairs. Vinny moved fast, silent, brutal in its precision. He disarmed the first man with a single twist, sent him crashing into the banister. The second raised his weapon. Vinny drove forward, slamming him against the wall. Marco lifted his own pistol. Elena heard the scuffle thuds, grunts, the unmistakable sound of bodies hitting furniture. Mia whimpered against her chest. Elena pressed her hand over her daughter's ear, whispered frantic prayers into her hair. Her own pulse roared so loud she could barely hear. Every memory of cold nights under bridges of holding Mia while sirens wailed blocks away crashed over her. She had survived so much alone. She could not lose this now. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. Vinny appeared at the top, landing blood on his lip sleeve, torn eyes wild with something beyond rage. Protectiveness so fierce it looked like pain. "Elena," he shouted. She shoved the chair aside, flung the door open. Vinny rushed in, scooped Mia into one arm, pulled Elena against his side with the other. He moved them toward the master suite reinforced door panic room beyond. Marco's voice echoed from below. "This ends tonight, Russo." Vinny kicked the master bedroom door shut, engaged the deadbolt. He set Mia on the bed, knelt in front of her. "Listen to me, kiddo. You stay right here with Mama. Don't move. I'm coming back." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "Don't go." Vinny cupped her face. "I have to keep you safe. That's what daddies do." He looked at Elena, rain-soaked, trembling yet steady. "Stay here. Lock this door behind me." Elena grabbed his arm. "Vinny, I love you," he said simply. "Both of you. More than anything." He kissed Mia's forehead, then Elena's, quick, fierce, desperate. Then he was gone, door closing behind him. Elena locked it with shaking hands. She pulled Mia into her lap on the floor beside the bed, rocked her gently. "It's okay, baby. Vinny's coming back. He always comes back." Downstairs, the fight had moved outside. Vinny faced Marco in the rain-slick driveway, security lights cutting harsh shadows across their faces. Marco's remaining men lay scattered, disarmed, unconscious but alive. Vinny had not killed. Not tonight. Marco raised his pistol. "Last chance. Step aside." Vinny stood unmoving. Rain plastered his hair to his skull, blood mixing with water on his cheek. "You want the Empire. It's yours. I'm done. But you walk away from my family. You never look at them again." Marco laughed short, bitter. "You think you can just quit? I already have." Silence stretched, broken only by rain. Then Marco lowered the gun. "You're a fool, Russo. But you're a dead fool if you cross me again." He backed toward his car. Vinny watched until the taillights disappeared into the storm. Vinny returned to the house, limping, slightly soaked, exhausted. He climbed the stairs, slowly knocked softly on the master bedroom door. "Elena, it's me." The lock clicked. The door flew open. Elena threw herself into his arms, sobbing openly. Mia wrapped around his legs, crying too. Vinny sank to his knees, gathered them both against him. Rain dripped from his hair onto their shoulders. He held them as though they were the only solid things left in the world. "I'm here," he whispered over and over. "I'm here." Elena pressed her face into his neck. "You came back. Always," he said. They stayed like that on the floor, father, mother, daughter, while the storm raged outside. The house, once a fortress of isolation, had become something else entirely, a home battered but unbreakable. Vinny looked down at Mia's tear-streaked face, then at Elena's. Love surged through him, fierce, protective, complete. Whatever came next, witness protection, new names, a quieter life, he would face it with them. And in that moment, rain still pounding the roof, he understood he had not just rescued them. They had rescued him. The rain finally lifted just before dawn on the final day of October 2025, leaving the world washed clean and glistening under a pale, hesitant sun. Inside the stone and timber house north of Chicago, the air carried the faint scent of pine logs burning low in the hearth and coffee brewing in the kitchen below. Elena Thompson stood at the tall window in the master bedroom, arms wrapped around herself, watching mist rise from the lawn like quiet ghosts departing. Mia slept soundly in the wide bed behind her small hand curled near her cheek, safe in a way Elena had once believed impossible. Elena's reflection stared back at her from the glass, still thin, still marked by shadows beneath the eyes, but no longer hollowed out by endless hunger or sleepless nights under highway overpasses. She had survived on scraps scavenged from alley bins on half-eaten sandwiches, abandoned in park trash cans on nights when the wind cut through her coat like judgment, and she pressed Mia against her chest to share what little warmth remained. Those memories lingered like bruises beneath the skin, tender when pressed. Yet here she stood, wrapped in a robe that cost more than she once earned in a month, inside walls that held heat instead of letting it escape through cracked plaster. Downstairs, Vinny Russo sat at the kitchen island untouched, coffee cooling in front of him. His coat hung over the back of a chair, still damp from the night before, sleeve torn where a man's grip had caught him during the final struggle. The bruise along his jaw had darkened to deep purple, but he barely noticed. His mind replayed the moment Marco's car disappeared into the storm, the rival's last glance, half defeat, half promise of future reckoning. Vinny had walked away from the empire he once ruled not by force but by choice. He had turned over every file, every recording, every name to federal agents waiting in an unmarked van 2 blocks away. Witness protection papers already waited in a plain envelope on his desk upstairs. He had given up power so that Mia could grow up without looking over her shoulder, so that Elena could finally sleep without one ear tuned to every creak in the night. The decision tore at him, gnawing remorse for the years he had spent building walls instead of bridges, violent conflict between the man he had been and the father he now needed to become. Yet every time he looked at them, his daughter laughing at a squirrel outside the window, Elena folding laundry with careful, reverent hands, the ache felt less like punishment and more like proof that redemption was still possible. Elena descended the stairs, slowly barefoot on the warm hardwood. She paused in the doorway, watching him. Vinny looked up, eyes softening the instant they met hers. "You didn't sleep," she said quietly. "Couldn't," he admitted. Thinking, she crossed to him, slid onto the stool beside his. Their shoulders brushed small, steady contact that grounded them both. "About what?" she asked. "About leaving," he said. "New names, new city, a house that doesn't need cameras on every corner, schools for Mia, a garden maybe, normal things." Elena's breath caught. "You're really doing it." "I already did," he said. "The papers are ready. We go when you say yes." She looked down at her hands, still thin, still marked by old calluses from scrubbing floors and carrying Mia for miles when buses were unaffordable. "I keep waiting for someone to tell me this isn't real, that I don't deserve it." Vinny turned her chair gently so she faced him. "You deserve every good thing that's ever been kept from you. And more." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was invisible for so long. People walked past us like we weren't there. Landlords laughed when I begged for one more week. Caseworkers looked through me. And now you see me. You see us. It hurts how much I want to believe it's permanent." He cupped her face with both hands, gentle, reverent. "It is permanent. I'm not the man who walked past you on that street anymore. I'm the man who will spend every day making sure you never feel invisible again." Elena's sob broke free. She leaned forward, forehead against his, tears falling between them. "I love you," she whispered. "Not because of the house or the safety. Because you chose us when you didn't have to. Because you stayed." Vinny's throat closed. "I love you too. Both of you. More than I knew I could love anything." They stayed like that, foreheads touching, breathing each other's air, until Mia's small footsteps padded down the hallway. She appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, hair wild from sleep. "Daddy," she said softly. Vinny opened his arms. Mia ran to him, climbed into his lap. Elena wrapped her arms around both of them, completing the circle. Vinny pressed his lips to Mia's temple. "Morning, kiddo." "Are we going somewhere?" Mia asked, sensing the quiet weight in the room. "Yeah," Vinny said. "Somewhere new. Somewhere safe. Just the three of us." Mia looked from him to Elena. "Forever, forever," Elena promised. Vinny held them tighter. The wealth that once defined him, the gated drives, the security details, the endless accounts, meant nothing compared to this. A daughter's trust, a woman's love, a family forged, not by blood or money, but by choice and compassion. Skin color, past poverty, present power, none of it mattered. Love, real love, refused to be separated by any of those lines. In the stillness that followed, Vinny spoke quietly, almost to himself. "I spent years chasing control. K-knowledge taught me it was empty. Lesson after lesson showed me what truly lasts. Education in pain and loss finally opened my eyes to what compassion really means. Another knowledge came when I saw you both. Real strength isn't in what you own, but in what you protect. Lesson learned through every cold night you endured without me. Education in humility arrived when I understood that wealth means nothing if it cannot buy peace for the ones you love. One more knowledge settled deep inside: family isn't built on power. Lesson reinforced every time Mia called me daddy. Education in grace came when Elena forgave me for not knowing sooner. And the final knowledge I carry now is simple: love sees no color, no bank balance, no past, only hearts willing to heal together. Lesson after lesson brought me here. Education in humanity finally set me free." Elena wiped her eyes, smiling through tears. "We're going to be okay." Vinny nodded. "Better than okay." He looked toward an imagined camera, toward the people who might one day hear their story. "To everyone watching this video, I wish you good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it so more people can enjoy these engaging stories every day. Tell me in the comments, how did this story make you feel? How does it connect to your own real life? Share whatever emotions rise up from deep inside your heart. I read every comment, and I promise to listen. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.